Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I am Rachel from Rachel Reads, and today I was inspired by upcoming ThrillerAthon to film my introduction to crime books. So I'm leaving this video really late. It is currently Sunday the 18th of August and ThrillerAthon starts tomorrow on the 19th, but I figured I can still pop this up on Tuesday the 20th and it may still help some of you in ThrillerAthon if you are planning on reading some crime, or even if you know it's not relevant to ThrillerAthon anymore because I got it up too late. Maybe it will introduce some of you to some interesting crime thrillers if you have never read this particular genre before. So the crime genre is something that I really enjoy. I really like that idea of the police procedural. I like the detective novels. I like whodunits and trying to figure out who the bad guys are. I really like that. I like other types of thrillers as well, but this is the type of book that got me into that thriller mystery genre. And I'm going to talk through, I'll probably go in order of how I got invested in these types of books and talk about why they are good for beginners. Now, these are by no means the only crime books that I have. I just wanted to pick the top 5. These are just my 5 recommendations on how to get started with crime books. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So the very first crime novel that I started to read was Mortem and the Case Capetta series by Patricia Cornwell. If you have never heard of these, I would be surprised if you've never seen these books or heard of them. They've been around since I think the 80s. Sorry, first published in the 1990s. So they've been around for almost 30 years. And they follow forensic pathologist Case Capetta as she works with Detective Pete Marino to try and solve crimes. So she is the chief medical officer of the state of Virginia and she works out of Richmond, and she is tasked with solving some really horrific crimes. Now some of these books are truly horrific crimes. They look at rape, they look at murder, they look at disfiguration and mutilation and just some really horrific crimes. But they are really well written, they're really well researched. I really like the character of Case Capetta. She's a really strong, independent woman. She's very loyal, she's very dedicated to her work, and she's very much a woman who is intent on proving herself and proving that she can do anything that she sets her mind to. So Mortem is the first in the series. There's about 30 of these. I have read probably the first 20 or so. I stopped reading these a while ago just because I needed a break because I was binge reading them. And once you get to about 20, you do need to take a break. I started reading these when I was probably about 15 or 16, so the language is accessible, but it's still engaging enough for an adult to enjoy. The first book in the series is about a serial killer who is entering women's homes, and he's raping and strangling them, and it is really brutally horrific. And yeah, so Kate and Pete Marino are trying to solve that murder. Really good books if you are trying to get into the series. And I like the fact that it is not just a classical detective novel. It's based on, you know, it's a different perspective. She's a pathologist, not a detective, but she quite often acts like a detective, and she probably does some things that she shouldn't. So I'll just leave it there. The next book that I really started to enjoy from the crime novel would be The Lincoln Lawyer and the Mickey Haller series by Michael Connelly. I loved these books when I first read them, and I still do, and I'm really hoping that Michael Connelly keeps producing more of the Mickey Haller books. I think there are either 4 or 5 at the moment, I can't really remember, but Mickey Haller is a defense attorney, and he will pretty much defend anybody if he's paid the right amount of money. But I really love the character of Mickey. I think as much as I say, you know, he'll defend anyone, I think he truly has a conscience, and you know, he's truly scared of actually having an innocent victim and not being able to, sorry, I just saw something on my shelf and I couldn't figure out what it was. He's truly scared of having an innocent victim and not being able to save them, but he truly does believe in the law and getting everyone a fair go. He has a really interesting dynamic with the people that he works with his ex-wife, who is a district attorney, and yeah, it's just a really good character. So the first book, The Lincoln Lawyer, if you haven't seen the film with Matthew McConaughey, don't watch it. The book is so much better. So Mickey Heller gets a new case. It is of a rich boy who is arrested for brutally beating a woman, and I believe he's charged with attempted murder because he has a knife on him. And Mickey takes the case. He believes that the man is innocent until the case starts to fall apart, and Mickey is reminded of a case that he had a few years ago. They're strikingly similar, except the culprit of that case has been in jail for years, and it becomes clear that the case and the suspect are really not what Mickey first thought they were, and it becomes quite scary. So really good series. I love Mickey. I had a big crush on him. I probably still do if I went back and reread these. I really enjoy them. Great books. Also, anything by Michael Connelly I think is quite easy to read and accessible. I think the language isn't particularly difficult, but they are exciting reads. The next book that I'm going to talk about is not necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for beginners, but I was relatively a beginner when I read these books, but I would probably go with one of the books that I've already mentioned before you pick up something like this, and that is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. Now, the reason I say I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for a beginner is because, one, it is a translated book. It's translated from Swedish into English, so sometimes that can be difficult. The translation can be a bit strange at times. The names can be quite difficult to follow. It is quite a large book. It is over 500 pages, and the plot is graphic and brutal and horrific. This really played on my mind. Some people might not consider this necessarily a crime fiction. I do, because it is Michael Blomstick is the main character, and he is a journalist, and he is investigating a particular crime, and he's really digging into that crime, and he gets involved with a hacker named Lisbeth Salander, and they begin to investigate. Now, their investigation takes them to some weird places that are not even really linked with that first investigation, but this story begins because they are investigating and they are digging, and that's why I would put this in the crime thriller category. But just be aware that this story has graphic rape scenes, graphic murder scenes. It talks about bestialities, it talks about mutilation and torture. Like, it's really, really graphic, but it is a really good book, and I really want to go back and reread this now. Highly recommend this book, but maybe it's not the way to start. The next series of books that I want to talk about is also by Michael Connelly, and I don't have the first book with me, but they are the Harry Bosch novels. So this one is The Last Coyote. I think it is the So this is the fourth in the series. I did not read these books in order. You do not need to read them in order. The first book I read with Harry Bosch in it was the Lincoln Lawyer series. He comes in the second or the third book. I can't remember which one. And there's a crossover, and that's the first book that I read, and that's why I wanted to go and read more Harry Bosch novels. Then the next one I picked up was like in the middle of the series. It doesn't really matter. And the only reason to really read them in order is because you can see that character progression, but I wouldn't particularly worry about that so much. Harry Bosch is a detective for the LAPD, and he is on the murder squad, and he investigates lots of different crimes. Nothing else I really need to say. Good books. If you're interested in that whodunit, following a detective, go for these books. I don't think Harry Bosch is particularly a well-developed character. I think he is more there to facilitate the story. So still a good book, really good introduction to crime thriller, more of that traditional crime novel than the rest of them because it is actually a detective novel. If that doesn't sound appealing, or it does, I would probably start with the Lincoln Lawyer first because I think they are better, and then go back to the Harry Potter series. That's how I did it. That's how I would do it again if I had the option. The last one that I'm going to talk about today is the newest. It's my newest find, and it's one of my newest favorites, and that is The Dry by Jane Harper. This is an Australian novel. It is about a Australian federal police investigator named Aaron Falk, who goes back to his hometown, one of the tropes I love. He goes back to his hometown to investigate the death of his childhood best friend. So it is believed to be a murder-suicide where his childhood best friend has shot himself and his family. But there are many inconsistencies in this, and Aaron starts to doubt that story, so he begins to investigate. And I love this because it is also not your traditional detective novel. So Aaron Falk is not a homicide detective by any means. He was a financial analyst. He does not return to his hometown as a detective. He returns there just as a private citizen, and all of his work back in this town is done unsanctioned and not without any authority. He's just using his investigation skills as a police officer to dig into this crime. I love these books. You'll read the first chapter and I swear you will be hooked. It begins so graphically and it just hooks you in straight away. It's just so good, and that first page you'll just get, like that first prologue, you will get hooked and you will love the book. I promise you, it is so good. They are my top 5 recommendations for getting interested in the crime genre. If you have read any of these books, please let me know. If you are interested in them but you're not quite sure, you want to know a little bit more about them, please comment below and I will answer any questions that you have. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will catch you next time. Bye.